The chief surgeon's laughter echoed through the trauma bay like a slap, and 5 wounded Navy SEALs lay bleeding on gurneys while he pointed at the newest nurse on the floor and said the words that would haunt the entire hospital by morning: "Give the 5 SEALs to the rookie. Let's see how fast she breaks." Before we dive into this story, if you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in people who rise when everyone expects them to fall, hit that like button, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, share this with someone who needs a little hope today, and subscribe to Midnight Tales so you never miss a story like this one. Her name was Maya Ellison, and she had been a nurse for exactly 11 days when the blackout hit the base hospital. The storm outside had knocked out 2 backup generators, half the senior staff was stuck on the wrong side of a flooded highway, and 5 critically wounded special operations soldiers had just been airlifted in from a mission nobody in the building was cleared to know about. Blood pressure crashing on 2 of them. Shrapnel wounds on 3. A ward full of monitors screaming at once, and only a skeleton crew standing between 5 men and the worst possible outcome. Dar. Holloway, the chief surgeon, a man with 30 years of experience and a reputation for chewing up young nurses and spitting them out before their first month was over, took one look at the chaos, one look at Maya's trembling hands, and decided this was the moment to make an example of her. "Let's see what they taught you in nursing school," he said, loud enough for the whole ward to hear, and then he walked away to handle what he called the real cases, leaving her alone with 5 men whose lives were slipping through her fingers. For a moment, Maya stood frozen in the doorway, the kind of frozen that comes from bone-deep fear, the kind where your whole body screams that you are not enough, that you were never enough, that everyone in this building already knows you don't belong here. She thought about her mother, who had scrubbed floors for 20 years so that Maya could go to nursing school. She thought about the diploma sitting in a cheap frame in her tiny apartment, the one she'd cried over the night she got it because it felt like the first real proof that she mattered. And then she thought about the 5 men in front of her, men who had families somewhere, mothers who were probably praying right now without even knowing why, and something inside her stopped shaking and started moving. She didn't have time to be afraid. She had time to act. She triaged the way she'd been trained, fast and instinctive, prioritizing the 2 soldiers whose vitals were crashing hardest, calling out orders to the one other nurse left on the floor, a terrified first-year named Priya who kept looking at Maya like she was waiting for someone else to take charge. Nobody else was coming. So Maya became the someone. She packed a bleeding wound with a steadiness she didn't know she possessed, her hands finally still, her voice low and calm even as her heart hammered against her ribs. She talked to the soldiers as she worked, not because protocol told her to but because some deep instinct told her that scared men needed a human voice more than they needed silence. One of them, a broad-shouldered man with a jaw clenched tight against the pain, gripped her wrist so hard it left a mark, and instead of pulling away, she leaned closer and told him he was going to make it, that she wasn't going anywhere, that she had him. The hours that followed blurred into a single long fight. The generator flickered twice and nearly died, and Maya kept a hand pump going on one soldier's 4 line for almost 20 minutes by herself, her arm burning, refusing to stop because stopping meant losing him. She caught a silent drop in oxygen on the quietest of the 5, a young man who hadn't said a word since he arrived, and she caught it only because she had learned, in 11 short days, to watch faces and not just machines. She adjusted, she called for backup that was slow to come, she made decisions that were technically above her pay grade because there was no one else to make them, and every single time fear tried to climb back into her chest, she thought of her mother's hands, cracked and calloused from work, and she kept going. By the time the storm broke and the backup team finally arrived, all 5 soldiers were stable. Not perfect, not out of the woods, but alive, breathing, holding on because one exhausted rookie nurse had refused to let go of them even when the man in charge had all but told her to fail. Dr. Holloway walked back into the ward expecting, perhaps even hoping, to find chaos he could scold her for. Instead he found 5 men resting under careful watch, vitals steady, charts meticulously updated in handwriting that was shaky but precise. He said nothing. He simply stood in the doorway for a long moment, and something in his expression shifted, though pride was not a word anyone would have used to describe it yet. Word travels fast in a military hospital, and by the next afternoon, everyone from the janitorial staff to the head of nursing had heard some version of what happened during the blackout. But it wasn't until 3 days later that the story took the turn nobody saw coming. A tall man in a crisp naval uniform walked onto the ward, flanked by 2 aides, and asked, in a voice used to being obeyed, to see the nurse who had cared for his men. He was their commander, a man who had flown in the moment communications were restored, and when Maya stepped forward, nervous, certain she was about to be reprimanded for some overstepped boundary, the commander did something that stopped the entire floor in its tracks. He looked at her for a long moment, and then he said her name. He remembered her. Years ago, before the uniform, before the rank, he had been a scared young enlisted man recovering from a training injury in a different hospital, in a different city, and a nursing student on rotation had sat with him through a night when the pain was unbearable and the fear was worse, talking him through it hour after hour until dawn. He had never forgotten her face, and now here she was again, older, a full nurse instead of a student, doing the exact same thing for 5 of his men that she had once done for him. In front of the entire staff, in front of Dr. Holloway, the commander told the story of that long-ago night, and then he said the words that would follow Maya for the rest of her career, that the mark of a true nurse isn't the diploma on the wall or the years of experience behind her, but the willingness to stay in the room when everyone else has walked away. He requested, formally, that she be assigned to oversee the recovery of all 5 soldiers, and he made it clear, without raising his voice, that anyone who doubted her competence had clearly never watched her work. Dr. Holloway, the man who had mocked her in front of a room full of frightened patients, said nothing for a long time. Then, quietly, in front of the same staff who had heard his cruelty days earlier, he apologized. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was simple, human, and it mattered more because of that. Maya went home that night and cried, not from exhaustion this time, but from something closer to relief, the kind of relief that comes when the weight you've been carrying alone is finally seen by someone else. She thought about her mother again, about all the nights of scrubbed floors and quiet sacrifice, and she understood, maybe for the first time, that she hadn't just survived that blackout. She had proven, to herself more than anyone, that she belonged exactly where she was standing. If this story touched your heart even a little, if it reminded you that kindness and quiet strength can change everything, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that they matter more than they know. And before we go, I want to ask something special. If you've ever been underestimated, ever been the person everyone expected to fail, drop a comment below with the word strong, so I know you made it through, and so someone else scrolling through these comments can see they're not alone either. Maya never forgot that night, and neither did the men whose lives she held together in the dark. Sometimes the people who change everything are the ones nobody bothered to believe in first.